Now that we know about eye level and the horizon line, we're going to take a look at how this applies to drawing from life. So our first subject is a plain white box. How do we know if we're going to use 1 point or 2 point perspective to draw this box? First of all, we can tell that we are looking directly parallel to the front plane of this box. And how can we tell that? All sides of the front plane of this box are vertical and horizontal, completely vertical and horizontal. There's no diminution at all. So we are viewing this object directly head on to the front plane. Therefore, we are in 1 point perspective. Now, as well as seeing the front plane, we can see the top plane of the box. When we see the top plane, we are below the horizon. So how do we find the horizon? If we were to extend indefinitely the lines of the top plane of this box, they would eventually meet at one single point called our vanishing point. Our vanishing point will always be on the horizon. So we can determine the horizon from the object itself rather than finding the horizon in a existing composition like the water or the field. Our object will tell us what our horizon is. Our vanishing point also gives us our center of vision. So this 1 point perspective vanishing point, is going to tell us so much about this object that we can start to draw it as if it's invisible or clear. We know everything about this box simply by taking two lines of one of the planes, extending it, finding our vanishing point, and constructing the box from there, simply by drawing orthogonal lines from the corners of the box to the vanishing point. Okay, so how does this apply to 2 point perspective? And how do we know we're going to use 2 point perspective? Well, first of all, you can now see two vertical planes of the object. Whereas before we only saw that one front plane, now we're seeing two front planes. And we begin to, again, extend our lines. And you can see there's diminution of these lines, which means if we back way up, extend them into infinity, eventually they are going to converge, giving us two vanishing points. When there's two vanishing points, now it's 2 point perspective. Just like 1 point, we could start to fill in all the lines of this box and know everything about the box because we have vanishing points which give us our horizon. Now, 2 point perspective changes all the horizontal lines, adding diminution to them, but it still does not change the vertical lines. Vertical lines also remain vertical in 2 point perspective, just as they do in 1 point. Okay, if we remember this scene from our first video, we may think there's no chance of finding the horizon because we can't see it like we're looking out over the ocean. But just like we did with the boxes, we can start to deconstruct this and find the horizon. So remember, on the planes that you can see, the lines of the planes that you can see, you can start to see where diminution occurs, and we can start to extend those lines out into infinity to find a vanishing point. Now, just with two lines, we've already found it, but let's keep going. Let's just extend every horizontal line that we see until it meets the others. Now, we know these are horizontal as in parallel to the earth. They're not horizontal on the paper, of course, but we know they're parallel to the earth. This sidewalk, if that sidewalk were straight, which it's really not, but that we can start to see that we are finding one single vanishing point. Let's say these power lines are actually straight. So we're finding a vanishing point. That vanishing point, as always, gives us our horizon. So we have one vanishing point on the horizon. We are in 1 point perspective. And that's just for this scene. These back buildings we're not going to worry about right now. What else do we know about 1 point perspective? Well, what do we say about verticals? Verticals still remain vertical. This telephone pole is going to appear vertical. Now we've got a little distortion due to the camera lens, but you see what I'm saying. Telephone poles vertical. Corners of the buildings remain vertical. And then horizontals. We're seeing, now here's the front plane of this building, just like we saw the single front plane of that plane box. So what happens here? Horizontals, when viewing the front plane head on, are going to remain horizontal, just like the corner of this piece of that building, just like this edge of that front plane of that building. Here's another horizontal orthogonal lines which would extend all the way to the vanishing point. This vertical remains vertical. This vertical remains vertical. We're starting to see how we build a scene simply by reading perspective. The horizontal lines in the sidewalk would remain horizontal. Because we are perpendicular to those from our station point. So there you go. Now if this stuff, the building started to disappear and we could see forever and see over the plains and see all the way to the ocean, you could see that we've maintained our horizon line.